Bianca, the party says the Editors Forum is actually trying to silence politicians. Tell us how so.
Well, Shahan, what they're basically saying is that what they've been doing is robustly discussing bias reporting, according to them, and specifically making mention of these 5 journalists, saying that they've taken up a position. A lot of them write opinion pieces and make their position clear, and then the next day they want to come and be a neutral journalist writing on them. But also saying that in the pieces that are critical of the EFF, they're not only critical of the EFF, but then they're also, according to their to the EFF, basically supporting the other side. In this case, it was Ramaphosa as well as Pravin Gordhan that was mentioned in court. So, according to Sanef, they're saying if someone is or does have a specific problem with a journalist, there are channels through which you can address this. You can approach the press ombudsman. You can take someone to court based on the law of defamation, but they can't be pointing out certain journalists and, according to Sanef, be calling all these people to act decisively. And it's basically a call to violence, according to Sanef. What EFF is saying is they're just basically trying to silence the EFF because they are using social media, according to them, to call out bias reporting and these specific journalists.
And then the EFF, of course, arguing the Equality Court shouldn't be hearing the case in the first place.
Yes, there are also technical matters that were also discussed in court, whether this matter should have been brought by Sanef, the management, after they made the decision to pursue this litigation, and then whether you can really argue this case under the Equality Act. Now, they touched on 2 points there, and this one is whether journalism is a prohibited ground. It should be an occupation, basically, that it should enjoy special protection. Sanef argues that this should indeed be the case. The EFF is denying this. But let's just take a listen to the EFF leader, Julius Malema, who spoke to us earlier.
The matter is not between us and Sanef. The matter is between us and Pravin, and they are using Sanef to come and defend Pravin. We were speaking outside court, outside the commission rather, against what Pravin is going to say in the commission. And Sanef took offense and came to the Equality Court. For what reason, we don't know. That's why their advocates are struggling. Sanef just brought a junior counsel here to come and destroy his career before it even started.
Now, Sanef says it has been able to link Malema's statements to social media attacks against journalists.
Yes, they said that this was specifically after that 2018 speech that Malema made outside the Zondo Commission, where he did make the comments about cutting off the head of the enemy. But then also later he did mention that they do condemn violence. But what Sanef has been arguing is that a lot of people have selective hearing. They only take one part of the speech and then they will start acting violently. But let's just take a listen to Sanef's Makhlase, who spoke to us just after court.
It has been quite an interesting 2 days, but we're quite confident about the case that Sanef was able to put forward. I think what was important is that we were able to show the direct link between Julius Malema's statement outside the Zondo Commission. This was when he was calling for heads to actually be cut off, etc., and then the subsequent avalanche of attacks on Twitter. I think that the one important thing was the concession from the EFF's legal team that they're actually appalled by the harassment and the threats and the violence on journalists on the social media Twitter. I think that is quite important. It happened in full view of all of the EFF's leadership. I think it is quite important that somebody who leads the 3rd biggest political party is crystal clear around condemning violence and the threats of violence and harassment and intimidation of journalists, whether on social media or physical.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Our reporter Bianca Tolme is in Pretoria.